Hello there, welcome to Straight Talk Sacred Pathway. My name's Stuart Wellborn, I'm a British working class author and former therapist, and I'm joined by my regular guest, Wa-Na-Nee-Che from Turtle Island, more commonly known as America. Good afternoon there, Wa-Na-Nee-Che.
Good afternoon.
Well, it's evening here, it's 9 p.m, but I like the sentiment. We're going to crack straight on with some questions. But before I do, anybody who's watching or listening, please do email in or even leave comments if you're watching it on YouTube with questions that you'd like me to put to Wa-Na-Nee-Che, uh, so that I can put more questions to him, not just the ones that I can think of.
Okay.
So, my first question is, if people, you know, want to go on a spiritual lifestyle, one thing they can do is go and get off the grid and live in the middle of nowhere. But for most people, that's not an option. How do you suggest people integrate, a spiritual path with modern day living?
Well, the first thing I would probably suggest is the fact that number one, they become indigenous people. And indigenous people just means a real person of the earth. They have to basically reconnect themselves to Mother Earth. And like we always say, to all of our relations, which means that we are related to everything because they all have a life force energy. And what people have to do is get away from society and the way society basically has brainwashed them to basically think and not feel. So if they want to start following the pathway, they have to go with what the feeling is and not what they're controlled by society to do. If we look around the world today and what is happening is that number one, people are leaning towards the control of the mind rather than the spirit. All the disasters that you look, all the hurricanes that are happening, floods, drought, volcanoes, earthquakes. This is all basically trying to tell us that we're out of balance and that we don't really want to become balanced because we're too much being controlled by the mind, by society, between greed and power, when all the power should basically be given to the creator. And we need to understand that, you know, we can actually fix a lot of things, but if we're not willing to basically come over to where we understand what our spiritual connection is, then all is lost. It's like I had two visions, very powerful visions. One showed destruction, and that's exactly what's happening now today. This was about maybe 10 years ago that I had these visions. And it showed that people were sitting on a fence and they had to decide which side of the fence they wanted to be on. Unfortunately, a lot of them were picking the wrong side. They weren't picking their spiritual connection, they were picking basically the opposite. And they were trying to learn how to become something they're not. And because of this, and because they basically become untuned with what's going around them and their spiritual connection, well, disaster's coming. And if they don't open their eyes and start practicing their connection, the end of humanity, the end of the as we know it, as far as the people themselves, humanity is going to be destroyed. Whereas the other vision said that if we can get people to understand their spiritual connection and give them the tools that will help them find their pathway. And like I said before, 144,000 candles, what candle do that person individuals? But they got to take that commitment to find out who they are and to utilize the tools and not let their mind basically, again, be controlled. It's like that exercise. Remember I did with you with the fingers and everything. Then I told them put it on your chin, and everybody put it on their cheek because they were looking at me. They weren't hearing what I was saying. They wanted to be right, so therefore, Wa-Na-Nee-Che's right, so therefore I'm going to do the same thing he does. The idea is they have to understand what is right for them, not what is right for me, what is right for them. And this is how they can find their spiritual connection is that they have to understand who they are and get rid of this mind control that they're under. They got to find their spiritual pathway. And how many people are willing to commit it? It's just like when I go and do my talks, oh man, everybody's fired up. And the minute they go home, they sit on the couch and do nothing. So it's almost like they need to inspire themselves, not be inspired by me, but inspire themselves. Hear the words I'm saying. Hear what I'm trying to tell them on how to connect to that spiritual road or pathway they have to be on.
Wow. Okay. Couple of things that came into my mind that I'm going to ask you, but one is, are you saying that, well, is it possible because, people have to pay bills and, you know, buy food and everything, that's part of how we live now. Is it possible to find yourself, get on that spiritual path and still be part of, how the world is and, be conscious of nature? Or have they really got to turn the back on modern world?
Well, no, in fact, when you look at it, money isn't evil. It's how you use it
Hmm.
makes it evil. And you have to survive. It's just like I was talking to some of the native people, and they said, "Well, why are medicine people charging?" And I said, "Well, let's think about it for a while." I said, "In the old ways, when they went and got help from a spiritual elder, from a medicine man, did they not give them blankets? Did they not give them horses? Did they not give them food?" Well, what they did was to make sure the medicine man was surviving, because when he helped them, that was the payment. Well, in those days, you didn't have money. So you gave material goods of what the medicine man needed. If he needed a new teepee, he got a new teepee. It was like I was doing a talk over in, I think it was not Scotland, but Upper England, over by Lincoln. And there was a dentist in the audience, and he said, "Why are you charging to give talks?" He said, "If you're so spiritual, why are you charging?" I said, "I'll tell you what, I won't charge for my talks if you don't charge people for fixing their teeth." He said, "How am I going to survive?" I said, "Exactly." So, money is not evil, it's how you use it. And if it's used basically for survival, of course we have to. It's no good to basically, like, say, for instance, if you depend on somebody all the time, say, for instance, you have someone who really knows how to fish. So every day he goes out fishing and he brings the fish home to the community and they eat fish and they don't starve. But what happens if the fisherman dies? Got a lot of people that basically that follow him into dying themselves because they don't know how to fish. So again, we can't expect other people to do things for us. We have to take control and do things for ourselves. And part of that is, how do we survive? We have to take care of ourselves. We have to take care of, if we're married, we got to take care of our wife, our children. So there's nothing wrong with money until you start using it for evil.
Back to one of my favorite authors, I keep bringing him up, but David Hawkins, he was saying how you can, you know, he did his talks basically for free. However, the charge was for the staff that had to be there and all the other things because he had a busy practice, so his bills were paid. So all that he charged was for people to turn up to come into the event was so that the hotels were booked, the marketing was done, the staff that were organising everything were paid, but he himself never got paid. Whereas on the other side, we do see um, probably more religious than spiritual people saying donate to us, and these pastors and that are very wealthy from
Hmm.
it. And I think that's something that people need to be wary of if,
Oh,
they
yeah.
are religious and spiritual, is that difference between, like you're saying, what they're doing with the money.
Yeah. It's like every time you turn TV, you have these religious people sitting up there talking to crowds of people and telling them about love, telling them about sharing, what about this? And then you check their bank account and they're billionaires.
Mm,
We sit there and we allow ourselves to be psychologically controlled. And it's like when they say in the Bible, say, for instance, when God talked to Paul or Peter and he said, "Upon this rock you will build my church." Well, isn't the rock the earth? It doesn't mean go out there and put individual churches and everything. And basically, again, once you start that religion, you say, "Oh, my religion is more powerful than your religion. So therefore, you need to come over to us because I can save you." And people have to realize the only people that can save you is you. It's by how you live your life.
I totally agree on that. And so, person that's just kind of starting out with a spirituality, they want to become one of your 144,000 candles. And, as you say, you've got to pay your bills, you've got to put a roof over your head, you've got to eat. What can they do to begin that process of, getting over greed? Because it's, as you say, we're bombarded and mind washed,
Mhm.
brainwashed, should I say, not mind washed, brainwashed to buy this, buy that, you need this, and all those things. What would you
Yeah.
advise somebody to get the ball rolling? What should they start with?
Well, probably the best thing I would say is take what you need and take the rest and do good with it. I mean, there's people, that your heart will go out to, but just make sure that you're not being taken by that individual, that it's a true person who truly needs help. It's like walking down the street. If you see somebody that your energy says they're all right, help them out. And it's like I said, you don't need that much to survive. You take, for instance, Musk, $400 billion worth, the richest man in the world. And yet he has 14, 15 children and
Does he?
another one on the way. Yeah. And yet he takes his money and invests it. And here are poor people basically suffering. And he's taking away their social security. They're taking away their health care. What the hell does he need that much money for?
Over here in the UK, we just get what we see on the news and social media and things like that. You are in America right now. Is he, I mean, I don't know if you've ever watched the TV series The Big Bang Theory, but he
Oh,
was in
yeah.
an episode of that, and it was at Christmas, and he was helping out at a soup kitchen. So yeah, you kind of had this. You would have thought at the time he wanted to be portrayed as this empath. I can't say the word empathic. Yeah, empathic kind of individual, and then all of a sudden, recently, he's saying empathy is for weaklings, and like you say, taking social security. Um, I hear the VA veterans are saying
Yeah.
he's taking money from sacking people there.
Uh-huh.
Um, what's going on with him? Is he as batshit crazy as he seems to be?
Uh, it's kind of funny when you take a look at that. Like if I see somebody and they have a sign up and they say, "I'm hungry, I haven't eaten," I'll take that individual into the store. Now, if he really is hungry and he wants some food to eat, he'll come and follow me. A lot of them, oh no, thank you, because they just want the money.
Mm.
They don't want, they really aren't really hungry. They're just looking for the money and trying to use some kind of terminology that will allow people to give them money. I really had to laugh one day because the guy was honest. He sat there and he held up his sign. He said, "I'm an alcoholic and I need some money to buy some alcohol." But he was honest, you
Yeah.
know, let him know he was an alcoholic, he had a problem, and that he needed some money to buy a drink. So again, you have to be careful when people too that we have so many people now on the streets that are probably making about, 10, 20, $30,000 just off the street because they really don't need the money. And the people that really need the money can't get it.
You didn't answer my question though. Is Elon Musk as batshit crazy as he seems to be
Oh yeah,
for
he's
what we're seeing?
I mean, even squirrels go after him.
Squirrels.
Nuts.
Oh, I forgot you and your dad jokes. Uh,
Yeah. But the more questions, people ask, the more I get into things, that and especially in discussions that really actually do help people. It's just like when I tell people, I said, I don't know if I mentioned it before about going in a circle with two rocks. And if something pulls you, put your rock down. Then go around again. And if it comes to the same place, that's where you have to sit and you offer tobacco to get an answer to a question that you have. If it's in different directions, that means you have two different situations that you have to resolve before you can basically get the answer that you need. Everything is out there that will help us, but we have to realize that we're not the only people on the earth. We're not the only life force energy on the earth.
Hmm.
And that 144,000 basically points of light, you have to basically ask questions where that energy happens to be. It's like when you look at what they call the medicine wheel. Well, there is no such thing as a medicine wheel because we don't have medicine, because our medicine is herbs. They're alive. So in there you have 28 points, but you have a bunch of rocks basically that represent coming into the center again. But they're only 28, but there's more. But 28 will teach you how to reconnect to one of the 144,000 if you know how to use them and how to ask your question. It's like you sit there, and I told this one lady one time we were in a workshop, and I said, "Go do that." She looked at me and said, "Do what?" I said, "Go do that." "What the hell am I supposed to do?" I said, "Exactly. If I don't explain what I want you to do, how can you do it?"
Hmm.
So we have to make sure that people have the answers so that they can ask the questions that will get the answers from where they need to get it.
So you're going to explain that then now?
Oh, I'll have to wait till they ask the questions.
Oh. You just said 28 rocks and two rocks. So could you explain that a little bit more? Because I know in the first episode you mentioned the two rocks walking around in a circle. What
Yeah.
are these other 28 rocks then?
Well, actually, it's not really a medicine wheel.
Hmm.
It's an icon. It's a doorway.
So what do you do with these stones? Are you making a circle?
Well, you start off with a circle and you have 28 points within the circle, but there are other rocks there too. But then you have some rocks to come in to represent how the energies all come together as one. So the center basically is like the human circle of life. Everybody of different colors are holding a the circle or the hoop in the
Yeah.
middle, and the hoop has no color. So it reminds people again that they need to balance themselves by getting away from the different colors and becoming one again.
The 28 stones thing, I'm sticking on that for a moment. I'm not letting you off the hook that easy. Is that something that people would need to do with somebody like yourself, or is that something they can do on their own?
You got to remember when you have the 28 stones and you have the stones coming into the center, all it basically represents is the fact that these are the people that are on your pathway to show you that when you find your pathway, you'll find other people. So, like I said, you don't become a separate energy. You become part of the 144,000 candles, and you develop your own line in which the information from when it first began all the way up to where it is now, where you can get answers. So I think you're not on there alone. You're in there with other energies that have the same pathway as you do. But you can borrow from the person who's standing next to you and next to you because you can learn from their knowledge. And rather than walking the same pathway, you walk hand in hand, side by side.
Right. And this all sounds good, but what's a practical step for a person then that they can do? Because people may not live in a place where there's loads of rocks that they can go to. They may not. If they want to start asking questions, for example, and they've not got countryside or anything like that, they're in a urban area and or
The rocks are only symbolized. They
right.
symbolize not a theory, but a way.
Uh-huh.
You don't have to have rocks to do it. It's just basically sometimes we need to physically see something to see how it works so that we can basically utilize the energy the way they're supposed to be. It's just trying to tell you that you have energy and sometimes you have the same energy as another person, but that this person beside you also has an energy that you can borrow back and forth to make you a lot stronger on your pathway. So again, you don't need the rocks. You just need basically to understand this is how it works. So you can use anything you want to in order to basically connect to your pathway.
Is there something somebody could do on a daily basis? As you know, you said that you don't meditate. Is there a daily practice, a ritual that people could do that will help them to become more attuned to?
And the most probably the first thing that I was shown, and it's very simple. You just go outside and you stand and you face each direction. And in each direction, you offer tobacco. And you simply have to say, if you have more words you want to say that come from your heart, or just say, hear me. And then you put the tobacco down. And you go to the four directions clockwise. And then if you only want to talk to, say, for instance, the light force energies, you use the four directions. If you want to talk to Mother Earth, you add one direction in between the other ones. Then if you want to talk to basically what we call the energies and the universal energies, you add the sixth one. Now, if you want to have a conversation with the creator, you do a seventh one and you hold it in your hand and you let your heart speak of what you're confused about, of what direction you want, or what answers you want to your questions. And then you basically simply put it down and then walk out of the circle. So that's the first thing they have to understand. But I always say do the four directions first. And then if you're instructed to do the other ones, then you know basically the simple way of connecting.
So, when you say the four directions, just to clarify for listeners or viewers, we're talking north, east, south, and west.
Yeah, and it doesn't make any difference what direction you start with, as long as you go clockwise.
Right. So you go to your four directions with your piece of tobacco, put it on the earth, yeah?
Yep.
So,
That was nice to do it with a tree because tree is one of the oldest living things. And if you do it with a grandmother and grandfather tree, and it's one of the grandmothers, it seems to basically get your answer to who needs to answer the question because the tree is again is attached to everything.
so would you have the tree in the middle of the circle?
Yeah, you go around the tree, and then when rather than placing the tobacco on the ground the seventh time, you put the tobacco, your prayers into the tree on a limb or something.
But for the first bit, just for the four directions, you'd go round the tree, put your four offerings of tobacco, and then would you stand by the tree and ask you a question?
Or just sit by the tree, because sometimes you just put your back to the tree. Because again, a lot of energy is in that tree and it's going to transport for you. How many people can go out there and hug a tree? And if the tree is dying, all of a sudden you have tears, you have sadness because you feel the energy of that tree.
Oh, I fully agree. I've definitely done things, I had my back to a tree and sat under it and felt the energies from that because I'm not sure if it was in one of your books or somewhere else where I read it, where, you know, you call them the standing people, is it?
Yeah, stone people, yeah.
The trees,
But
standing people.
the trees are different. The stone people are the stones. But that was funny because I used to always like that saying. If a tree falls in the forest, does anybody hear it? And I said, of course, all the energies here that are in the forest. They hear it all. You don't just because you're not there doesn't mean it doesn't make a sound. So
Mm.
again, it's how we're controlled a lot of times, just by saying certain things. Yeah, so that reminds me of that one story about the vampire bat. And he comes flying into the bat cave and he has blood dripping off his fangs. And everybody, all the other bats get all excited with the blood and everything. What happened? What happened? Where'd you get the blood? He said, follow me. So they all fly out, follow him outside the bat cave. They go down the mountainside, go across the meadow, across the stream, goes into the forest, and he stops, and everybody stops, and he says, "You see that tree over there?" And the vampire, yeah. He said, "I didn't." So sometimes the answer is right in front of you, but you don't see it.
Yeah. What I was just going to say though, I must have read it somewhere else, not your book, but the trees were referred to as the standing people, and they said that because they live longer, you need to sit under them because we're like ants scurrying around to the trees, and that you need to sit there for a long time for them to notice you. Is that from your book or somewhere else?
I think it's from my book. That you brought a very interesting question too, because people sit there and they think that because of tradition sometimes that you have to suffer to basically get a vision, and that they used to put people up on a hill to sit there, and all they had was water, special tea, and they would sit there for 4 days to wait for a vision. In reality, a vision can come to you at any time. You can be driving down the road and boom, a vision will come. You don't have to suffer for it. It's just that when you're ready to hear it, you hear it. And sometimes by doing and going out and on a vision question, sometimes you're forcing a a time that you want a certain type of answer, so you're willing to suffer to get that answer. But when you find out who you really are, that's free. You don't have to suffer to get who you are. It's like one vision I had, and I needed to get to the top of the mountain. And I said that the mountain was very difficult. So in the vision, I said, to hell with this. I created an elevator and went up to the top. And I found my answer, what I was looking for. I didn't have to climb the mountain. I just basically had to get to the top of the mountain.
Okay. That just made me think because you said about the suffering. You know the film A Man Called Horse with Richard
Um,
Harris, where he did, was it the Sundance, where he's got bones in his chest and he's dancing backwards until they pop out of the flesh and all that. Um, Clearly, that was part of a ritual. Was that to get a vision then, or was that for something else?
A lot of it was to make a commitment to Mother Earth and to the human beings. Now, in the old days, it wasn't a spectacle. A lot of people weren't allowed when they did their Sundance. And when I went to a Sundance and I ran into Frank Foolscrow, and I remember him saying to me, he looked at me and he looked at that dog and he said, that dog has two different color eyes. And I looked at the dog and I looked at him and I said, "Yeah, I know." I said, "I have to live in two different worlds, don't I?" And he had the biggest smile. He said, "You understand?" I said, "Yes, I do." So that night when I went to bed, I had a vision about the first Sundance and how they had the tree, but they had a pit dug in front of the tree. And the young man that was basically performing the ceremony, they pierced him. Then he got up, but then he had antlers, but he had deer skin over his face. So no one would know who it was. And there was only like four people. The medicine person was there. His father and mother could be there, or his grandfather and grandmother. But it was a very small group of people that were there for to support him. And as he danced, his face wasn't recognized, but the blood dripped onto Mother Earth as a sacrifice to Mother Earth. Nowadays, seem to make a spectacle of it, and that you have crowds when they do the Sundance.
You still do that then with the bones through the chest?
Still do it, and I went to a couple of them. The second one I went to, I met a individual that I knew. They call him Big Joe, and I had my sacred bundle. And I said, "Would you do me a favor?" He said, "Since would you take this on one round around the sacred tree?" So he danced with it and he went around the tree. And when he got done, he came over and he said, "What is this?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "When I went around that tree, when I came to the end, I could hardly carry it. It was so heavy, he said. And so I said, it's my sacred shirt. And I said, since you honored me by bringing and honoring the shirt, I'll show you what it is. And I showed him what the shirt looked like and everything. And he was just completely blown away from it. But they were having difficulties and everybody was passing out because there was no wind. And one of the dancers asked me, would you like to go and touch the tree? And I said, I'd be honored. And so I got there and he led me to the tree and I had my sacred bundle and I put my hand on the tree and all of a sudden you could hear the crowd going, ah. And, at that time, when I didn't have my glasses, I couldn't see, but I'm partially blind and I couldn't understand. But I sat there and I said a few words from my heart and all of a sudden the wind came in.
Wow.
And when I walked out, I said, what just happened? He said, well, when you touched that tree, the wind came in, the tree turned into a thunderbird. And they didn't suffer anymore.
Energetically, you turn into a thunderbird then.
And while the leaves, the branches almost formulated into a thunderbird.
Right.
And so I couldn't see it because I couldn't see it, but it wasn't for me. It was for the people so
Right.
that they could stop suffering.
Right, we're going to have to wrap up now because we're coming to the end of our time on Zoom at the moment. And I think that was a nice spot to finish on, that nice little story about Sundance. You've educated me there, Wa-Na-Nee-Che. Remember, people listening or viewing, if you've got any questions that you want me to put to Wa-Na-Nee-Che, you can either email me, Stuart at realityresponsibility.com. You can leave comments if you're watching this on YouTube, and I will see them and put them to him. Or you can contact Wa-Na-Nee-Che himself on Facebook.
The other thing, remember the Field of Dreams? They
Yeah,
say,
you're going to have to be quick here.
you build it, they will come.
Yeah,
If they ask the questions, they get the answers.
indeed. Well, thank you, Wa-Na-Nee-Che. I am going to end the recording now. And thank you to people that have listened to our last episode. Hope we get plenty more on this one. Thank you for tuning in to the Straight Talk Sacred Pathway podcast. I hope you'll come back for our next episode next week. And if you've got any questions you'd like me to put to Wa-Na-Nee-Che, you can email me at stuart@realityresponsibility.com. Details should be in the description where you're listening to this podcast.